Alrighty, good afternoon, you guys, or morning, or whenever you're watching this podcast. We're really excited to start the World Unit, but let's make sure that you open up to the beginning of the World Unit on the first page, and you'll notice that there are the 6 key questions for world analysis.
And this is page 207.
And just like the Creator Unit, we want to make sure that you number all of those questions. So let's quickly go through those questions. Question number 1 is, how does this work of art reflect the values of its time period? Question number 2, what philosophies of ideas from this time period influence this work of art? Question number 3, is this work of art a response to a political situation or historical event? Question number 4, is this work of art part of a movement? If so, what are the characteristics of that movement? Question number 5, what qualities does this work of art have in common with other types of art from the same era or movement? And question number 6, how is or was this work of art used by the people of its time?
Okay, I think we're ready to start.
So these are the major questions that you're going to want to answer when looking at the World Unit. Our first slide that you see right now is the Pieta by Michelangelo.
And we're mostly going to deal with question number 1. How does this work of art reflect the values of its time period? And just to start, probably because we've already done the dating art by eras, most of you, just looking at this, would be able to figure out that it's from the Renaissance.
And why is it part of the Renaissance period by just looking at it? What are the major characteristics? Well, first you can see that there's absolutely no movement.
Right. So we look at the sculpture in general. They are posed. If they were moving, we'd probably think it was from the Baroque time period.
Additionally, we're starting to see some really strong bodies.
Yes, and that is one of the Renaissance values. They have begun to really study anatomy. They've been dissecting bodies. This is the beginning of the scientific era in a lot of ways. And they're celebrating the human body as God's most perfect creation.
Correct. And finally, you could look at, when we look at their faces, the emotion is there, yet it's very subtle.
Exactly. So these look like human beings for the first time, as opposed to in medieval art. They really look like human beings with real emotion on their faces, but it's subtle emotion.
Excellent. So let's ask ourselves question number 1. How does this work of art reflect the values of its time period?
Well, one of the things that most people don't even notice when they look at this is that Mary is way big.
Yeah, I mean, our Jesus is a big boy, but he looks like a baby in her hands.
Right. In fact, if you saw this sculpture in real life, the body of Jesus is exactly proportionate to what, an average man's body would be.
Wow.
But if Mary rose to her feet, she would be 9 feet tall.
Yeah, she has enormous legs.
Yes, she does. And
Look
her
at those hands,
I
yeah.
know, trying to hold him up. Okay, so why did Michelangelo do this? Well, this reflects a Renaissance value. In the Renaissance, the ideas of calm and kind of harmonious being, those are what's considered beautiful. And Michelangelo had to make her big so that she would look restful and at peace as she held.
Right. If she was any smaller, I mean,
She'd be struggling.
And that would not be beautiful to look at.
No, it wouldn't.
And that makes it so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at her face, you see that
something?
it's beautiful, and her emotion, you feel so sympathetic.
It's heartbreaking.
Because it's so subtle.
Mm-hmm. One other thing that makes this very typical of the Renaissance is that Michelangelo signed this right across the front of her body.
Oh yeah, you could kind of see that in this picture. Let me quickly go forward. On the bottom right.
Yeah, you could see a little bit of the lettering there. That says in Latin, Michelangelo did this. That is so entirely a Renaissance value, because no medieval artist would have ever thought to sign his work of art. But this is the beginning of artists really thinking of themselves as something special, right. As even being creators, yeah, like God in that sense. And so, yeah, they're signing their works for the first time.
Should we quickly talk about his feet and his toes?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I mean, if you look at Jesus, you could see the perfection in his body, and we're starting to see really strong bodies, except for if you look at his right toe, what do you call it? His second toe is a little bit larger than his big toe, which makes him more human.
Yeah, it does. And that is also a Renaissance value. They're really celebrating everything that goes with being an individual human being. And that's part of the humanism that starts in the Renaissance, the focus on the human being.
Great. And wow. I mean, that starts with that and then ends up with a beautiful toe.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Just the detail.
Yeah,
Holy
I know.
cow.
Those fingernails there, just amazing. Almost creepy.
Mm-hmm. All right, so should we move on to our next piece?
Let's go ahead.
This is Pablo Picasso's Guernica. And the question we're going to focus on is question number 3. Is this work of art a response to a political situation or a historical event?
One of the things that's remarkable about this particular work of art, too, is that Picasso hated politics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he has much work that is political, but this one, which is arguably his most famous,
Is extremely political.
it's extremely political and still is. It's amazing. All right, so you want to go ahead and tell them the story about what happened?
Sure. We were talking about the Basque people, which is they're in the northern part of
Yep, in Spain.
Spain.
Way, way up in the mountains, and they've been cut off from the Spanish people for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they have their own language, they have their own culture. They barely consider themselves Spanish.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's another gentleman that you need to know. His name is General Franco.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and General Franco was in charge of the Nationalist Party.
Yes, and the Spaniards had just elected their first democratically elected government in Spain, and Franco didn't like it.
No, not at all, and he wanted to change that.
So he did.
He's definitely did that, and he
Yeah.
used the Basque people as basically an example
Right.
of what would happen if you didn't follow his lead.
That's right. So he overthrew the democratically elected government, started a civil war. When the Basques didn't want to support him, he responded by actually getting his buddy Hitler
Yeah, Adolf.
to help him out. Hitler used some planes that he wanted to test anyway, and they completely destroyed.
Yeah, on
Not-
market day, they
Yeah,
just
I
took
know.
out thousands.
Yeah, they didn't. What's so awful about it is that it wasn't just any Basque city; it was the one that was most important to the Basque people. Had
Like
all
the
their
culture, the heart of
yeah,
of
and it
this
wasn't
town.
just any day; it was on a day when thousands and thousands of people were in town on market day. So-
People were in town, animals were out, and they, you know, it was worse that they didn't just bomb them, but like when they would run away from the bombs,
They chased them.
they chased them. They practiced with their machine guns. I mean, it was just practice for Hitler.
It was a massacre.
It was scary, and you could kind of see that in this painting.
I think so.
You see
yeah.
the chaos. You see, I mean, bodies and limbs.
Yeah, it's funny too because often when you first look at this, you don't look carefully enough to see what's really there. But if you look on the left, you can see the mother holding the dead body of her baby.
Oh, screaming.
Yeah.
You see on the bottom left a man's head who's decapitated. Do you know that he's holding a flower here?
Oh, I know. You know, for the first time actually this semester, one of my students pointed that out.
I think that's really cool.
I'd never noticed it. Yeah.
And it's not just the people who are in pain, but also the animals. And Pablo Picasso
Right.
really loved animals
Yes,
as well.
he did. More than people.
Hmm.
Right.
So here's just the aftermath, real
Yeah.
pictures of the actual town.
Yeah.
It's completely destroyed.
And there's the real Guernica, which is now in the Prado Museum in Madrid. And just to know that this is still a very controversial work of art. The Basque people believe that it belongs to them.
Hmm.
And it's been in the Prado Museum ever since Franco was out of power because Picasso had strict rules for this work of art that it was not allowed in the country of Spain until a democratically elected
Was
government
reelected.
was. Yeah. And so for a long time it was in New York City. And finally, when the Prado, got this beautiful room and they set everything up for this work of art, it traveled from New York back to Madrid. But the Basque people really feel that it should belong to them in one of their museums. Well, the argument has been that they didn't have a good enough museum to put it in. And then they built the Guggenheim
Which is
at Bilbao, Spain, which we looked at.
correct, and that's
And
absolutely beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it has a space specifically where they could put this work of art.
It's
But-
ready, but now it's just another little battle.
Yeah, it's another battle, and the Prado, they're not likely to give this up. I mean, this draws thousands of people to the museum every year.
Yeah.
So,
All right, let's talk about Mr. Pollock, Jackson Pollock. We're looking at a piece called Lucifer by Jackson Pollock.
Yeah.
And the question we're going to focus on is question number 2. What philosophies or ideas from this time period influenced this work of art?
and this is absolutely a key question because Jackson Pollock still is probably the artist people most love to hate. And if you don't understand the philosophies that influenced him, this just seems absolutely ridiculous. Actually, even after you understand the philosophies,
It still seems really abstract.
It can, yeah, definitely. But understanding the philosophies really does help. Okay, so what's the first one? The first is the influence of Freud's theory about the unconscious mind.
Right, and he believed that there is no such thing as an accident, that
Right.
your subconscious mind pushes some of these deep and evil thoughts,
Right.
and they just come out and
They
control
come
your
out.
actions.
Right. So, things like Freudian slips when you accidentally say something you didn't really mean.
Or call someone the wrong name.
Call someone the wrong name, which is so
Whoops.
embarrassing. All sorts of those kinds of little accidents. Freud believed that that was your unconscious or subconscious mind trying to reveal itself. And Pollock totally agreed. So when he threw all his paint at the canvas,
That wasn't an accident.
It was not an accident. That was because of something in his unconscious mind.
And that controlled his beauty.
Yes.
And what was his other philosophy or theory,
All right,
which is a little bit more complex?
Yes, this is. You can feel really smart if you understand this. He was an existentialist.
Whoa, that's a big word.
That's a really big word. Just write exist and then Entialism.
Yep.
Existentialism. And existentialists believe, first of all, that the only meaning that there is in life is what you create for yourself.
Right.
And you are what you are simply because
you do what you do.
So, I tell the kids, a lot of them believe that they have to come to school, for example.
Right.
And existentialists would say, absolutely not. You chose to come to school, and every single day you make hundreds of decisions that end up creating the person that you are. Right?
Right.
Are you an
and that makes
existentialist?
sense. I don't think so.
No.
I mean, that's really too
It's
deep
extreme.
for me.
Yeah, I think there are some parts of it, like I think that it's useful to believe it, even if it's not really totally
But
true.
it makes sense, though. I mean, every decision that you make will have an impact on your
Right.
next decision.
Right. But then, of course, all of you who are thinking ahead are going to ask, well, what in the heck does that have to do
With
with
this
splattering
paint,
paint
right,
all
exactly.
over, right? Well, this is really the reason that Jackson was so important, not just to American artists, but to artists throughout the world. Through his art, he suggests that the final product isn't what really matters.
So it's not those beautiful portraits
Right.
of these epic battles.
Or
and-
landscapes, or anything else. What matters is the process of making art.
So action painting.
Action painting, because what you see here is basically the remnants of Jackson Pollock creating not just this work of art, but himself.
Right, and when you actually see a Jackson Pollock painting in person, it is pretty powerful and really cool.
I know, that's the weird thing.
You
they
think
are
that you're
fun to
looking at
look
just
at.
paint, and I can do that, and anyone could do that. But I mean, you see, so I've seen one that there's an actual cigarette butt of Jackson Pollock in the painting.
Really?
Yeah, it was very surreal. But you're thinking, oh my God, the guy actually was smoking while he made it, and you're thinking
Right.
about the process.
Oh, that's
of him.
really cool.
Yeah.
Where did you see that?
It was at the Art Institute. It was on the
you
bottom
have to show
right.
me
I will.
when
I
we
will.
go. Okay.
It's
That's really
very
cool.
cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are the two big theories that influenced Pollock. You still might not like him after you understand those theories, but
But I mean, Jackson Pollock, his pieces were abstract, but you're talking about the art of action painting.
right. And he really did change the way people looked at art. And if you can do that,
That's
that's
powerful.
That's powerful, and you're going to be a famous artist even if you can't draw. And he really wasn't much of an artist in the traditional sense.
No, but I mean, there he is in action.
Yep.
And we'll see a little bit more of him at the Blue Man
We
Group.
will.
Alrighty. Have a good day and good luck.
Humanities Online.
That's all, folks.